Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with Special Selection Week and check out the next one. This one is coming at us from Daniel Miralenka. I hope I said that correctly. Interested in you reacting to early Septicflesh, like from the first 4 albums. I've compiled the list only to realize it includes almost everything except the songs that are too short or uncharacteristic. So, here you go, and I was delivered a list of like 30 songs. And please don't tell me beforehand which song comes up. So, I used the old random number generator to pick an album and to pick a song, and we ended up with Pale Beauty of the Past. I believe this is their first album, but I don't quite remember. That's better. Let's get into it, I guess. Dang, that is some spooky stuff. Really interesting harmonic work. Rhythmic intensity is shared between all the instruments. Whoa. That panning is pretty cool. That synth in the background is doing a really good job of filling up the space that the otherwise anemic guitar tone wasn't. Really good choice to add that in. Dang, we cut to halftime and a tempo change to really slow it down. Yeah, they play around with a lot of space, which is interesting. I was wondering where that was going, because the sound was very lopsided. And then they did a pan. So much snare work in this track. Yeah, these guys are very aware of space, and I think that's what's standing out to me most. Nice little dip in the Phrygian there. I like the phrasing on this solo. Like the rest, a lot of the song is these really quick, what are these, 16th notes? And the solo was very withheld, and I dig that. Alright, so as expected, for anybody who kind of has been around the channel for a bit, that is not my cup of tea. That is, yeah, that is not something I would go out of my way to listen to. However, as usual with this channel, I am going to find some stuff to appreciate about it. I talked a lot already, and we're going to expand on some of these ideas. So the big one to me, and what I said is they really know how to utilize space. They know when to leave it, they know when to fill it, and they know how to do it tastefully. There were a couple sections. I think it was the. I can't even tell you the song structure here. So, but there was a section near the beginning, which saw the 18th notes. God, saw the 16th notes in the guitar, with that dirty, crunchy tone, but it's a very narrow, crunchy tone. It is not the super large tone that we see in stuff like Gojira recently, where they just have this larger than life guitar tone. Even though it's distorted, even though it's overdriven, it's still sort of a narrow thing. And I don't know if that came through because of the cabinet and amps they were using. I don't know if that was a mixed decision. And if I'm remembering this correctly, and it is their first album, uh, how long ago was this created? So technology could also come into that equation as well. But they, for whatever reason, they realized that it's a narrow sound, and they put in a much wider. At first, I thought it was some sort of large bell, but I only heard that timbre once, so I'm thinking that that was just my ears being caught off guard and trying to figure out what it was quickly. And I I came to the conclusion by the end of the section that it was an acoustic guitar, or maybe a non-overdriven electric, just with a very wide mix to it. And it holds out these long whole notes, which is in huge contrast to the fast picking that the electric guitar is doing, the overdriven one. And not only that, but like I said, it's a wider sound. It's filling up a lot of the space, and you can notice immediately when its note fades out and it hasn't started its next one yet, the song feels kind of empty in those sections. Um, And it's this beautiful back and forth between filling up the sound sphere and letting it be kind of anemic, letting it be empty, and kind of, feeling that emptiness. And I really dig the playfulness that they have with space like that. We can also see their attention to space in the panned vocals. The first time it really caught me off guard. The vocals are front and center. They're a little wide. I think there's a bit of reverb on them or something to give them a bit more width. Maybe they're double tracked with two individual tracks rather than just copy and paste. So you get some of the attack and release uh, differences between the two, kind of adding width to it. And then just out of nowhere, bam, 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 back and forth like that, with some panning. And at first, much like I'm going to talk about in a little bit with the piano part, it feels lopsided out of nowhere. You have a very centered vocal track, and with no sort of warning, it's pulling. It's on your right side now. I know this is backwards, but this is my right. I swear to you, it doesn't look like right to you. This is my right though. So it pulls to the right and then the left, and it's got this back and forth echoey thing, and yeah, it's just that little bit of attention to space and how everything sort of fits within the sound sphere. And like I said, they also did that with the piano solo. When it kicked in, right panned, and then after 4 bars or something, it started its next phrase left pan. And every time we had a phrase change, um, we changed the panning as well. And it's just uh, yeah, it's just they play around a lot with how these sounds fit within the overall space of the song, and it's kind of awesome, especially when so many of the tones are thin. And maybe that's, I mean, like I said earlier, it could be due to a lot of variables. It could be due to the time that the song was created. It could be personal taste and they intentionally wanted that. um who knows? May Well, let me say it, somebody probably knows. I don't know though. I'm missing the context of some of the surrounding environmental stuff for this. I really wish I could just easily find when this stuff came out. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that can tie into why it sounds anemic to my ears, but I don't really think that matters because the end result is that they end up playing around with space in a lot of really fun kind of ways, and that in itself is phenomenal. We don't really hear that too much, especially when we take into account. So this was 1994. So yeah, there's, even if it was intentional and it wasn't necessarily a restriction of the technology, mixing standards and what is preferred or what is good mixing technique changes throughout time. And this is 30, almost 30 years displaced as far as tech and good practice go. So it could just be that I'm used to modern mixing and that this feels small to me, empty to me, because I'm just very used to the very wide sound that we have in the 2020s. It is just, the modern sound. I'm used to it. Um, but getting back on track though is dang, what was I talking about? That is disheartening. We were talking about space and they utilize it well. I don't know. Dang. All right then. Let's move on. Unfortunately, and we're gonna end up looking at the vocals. Now the vocals are interesting because again, this could be a mixed thing. It could be because of the tech or just the year practices. But it's a growl. I'm not a big fan of growls. We did growling week once, and I grew to appreciate them a little bit more, but there's also a lot of technique that I think needs to go into growling for me to really enjoy it. And I saw a little bit of that here. And the two key things for me is mix and enunciation. The mix helps because a lot of at least modern bands with harsh lower end vocals like to mix them into the band. It becomes another instrument, another texture, and that's fine. I'm not saying you can't do that, but when you bring the spotlight, when you remove some of the spotlight from the vocals, especially in something that's going to be difficult to listen to anyways, and you push it down into the mix with the rest of the instruments, it's doubly difficult for me to understand what's being said. All right, the harsh vocals themselves are already going to be difficult for me. But then when you push it down into the mix, you're adding another layer of sound that I'm having to push out of the way to focus in on these to hear what's going on. And then a third aspect, or a second aspect, would be the enunciation, which I think is going to be very key once you start hitting these guttural sounds. You really need to emphasize your syllables to ensure that they break through and come out cleanly in the growling. There was one band a long time ago on the channel. We're talking probably about a year ago. I don't remember who they were, but I likened the growls to hip hop. I said that they were very rhythmic, rhythmically similar to hip hop lyrics, the way that they are said as well, and there's a lot of enunciation on them. I could hear the words. Even if I couldn't exactly make out everything, I could hear more syllables that sounded familiar to my ear. Now, this was early in my journey into growling, and it was just beyond difficult for me to hear it, but at least I was hearing more syllables that were recognizable to me. Um, and I think I've also mentioned Ginger in the past. When she gets down into her lower notes, there's a lot of enunciation. I don't know if that's to compensate for the accent because she's singing out of her native tongue. But Tatiana, I tend to have an easier time understanding her lyrics, even at the lower end, because she enunciates very well. And I think here we see another example of some enunciation that is done a bit stronger than your average growler. I don't want that to be mean or derogatory in any way, but I do think people who growl and put a bit more emphasis on the words, they do it better. And of course, that's subjective, but to me, I think if you're going to growl, you need to enunciate a lot harder than if you are singing cleanly. Or even doing fry vocals. I think fry vocals, the enunciation just comes out more naturally as well. I don't know what it is about growling. It could just be the lower end of the range, the register that's muddying it up. But it's the only vocals, and it could also be that I've listened to fries for since I was 15, so I'm just more used to that. Could be as well. But with these growls, I feel like enunciation is very key for me to enjoying them. And yeah, I'm not going to say that I loved this. Growling is still a texture thing that's not entirely pleasant to me, and I understand that that's kind of the purpose. But I did enjoy. I think they fit with the music well. This reminds me a lot of. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna go there. That I was gonna say it reminds me of Flesh God Apocalypse, but I've really only heard two songs from them, and I'm kind of having a hard time actually remembering what they sound like, other than my ideas that I have of them. So yeah, we're not. I'm not gonna directly make that comment. Um, but yeah, so we have some really cool use of space. We have some really fun. Oh yeah, yeah, the fun tempo shifts. So there's a lot of tempo movement in here. Some of it is direct, some of it is simply half time and double time, just to create sludge or frantic sections. But there was one section that really got me because it almost feels like it immediately went to halftime on beat one. And then on beat two, we actually dropped down like an extra 15 beats per minute. Not a lot, but enough to feel like we actually slowed down a lot. It was kind of phenomenal. It was almost like a multiplicative aspect to it where we did a halftime plus a little bit, and it ended up feeling a lot more than just pulling the BPM down in half. Um, or not even pulling it down in half. It could just be that everybody shifted from, 16th notes to eighth notes. That idea in itself could make it feel like we've entered halftime. And then just pulling the tempo down a little bit alongside, lengthening all the notes. And yeah, that section hit hard. Um, but on a performative level, I have to give some respect here that these guys probably hit it feels like 10 or 12 different tempos here, and none of them had lead ins. We didn't have a drummer or a single guitarist come in and, give a bar or even two beats, half of a bar, um, to get everybody else, kind of be the conductor, to set the tempo for everyone else to match. Everybody came in at the same tempo every time, and that just takes a lot of practice and familiarity with both the work and your bandmates. And 1990, I mean, is this their first album, 94? Um, if this is their first album, I mean, that's just for them to pull that off first time. That's just, I mean, that's awesome. That's just a lot of musicianship right there. So, the other thing I want to talk about is I think this is where I was leading earlier. Watching the audio bar, the visual, whatever this thing is, the visual mixer. These guys sat at the same volume length, same volume height. Like I've said before, this is not a scientific value, but I like to keep music at negative 15 dBs for the reaction stuff. It gives me a little bit of overhead to talk above, and I think it's loud enough for most people that it doesn't end up causing you to have to raise your volume ridiculously high. But it sat at negative 15 for the whole song. It doesn't matter how quiet or empty some of the sections seemed, even the beginning, which seemed rather sparse, and it felt quiet, certainly. But as far as that goes, they were projecting the same volume out for the entire song. And it wasn't even bounces where it was like bouncing down and coming back up. It was a solid sound. This was just a sonic assault for 6 minutes or whatever. Yeah, 6 minutes. And to have that where the volume level never really moves at all and still find a way to introduce dynamics is fascinating. And like I said, I think some of that comes down to space. When they wanted it to sound quieter, they just used up less space. So even though the volume itself isn't changing, it feels quieter because of the sparseness. And again, that's just very good use of space, knowing when to use it, when not to use it, and how to manipulate it properly to achieve the effects that you're going for. Uh, and I think that's my big takeaway here is just, yeah, the way that they utilize space. They're very aware of how much space their music is taking up and how to achieve their ends by manipulating it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Septicflesh, Pale Beauty of the Past. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Septicflesh. If you enjoyed them, if you didn't, if there's other songs you need to check out from them, hit me up. Also, if you have any context about how or why this was recorded the way it was, my guess is still going to be a little bit of a little mix of the technology at the time and also the idea of what a song's supposed to sound like at the time. You can listen to a lot of songs from the 80s and 90s, and a vast majority of them sound less full. than modern music, and that's just due to, production technique and what classifies as good production throughout the generations and throughout the decades, I guess. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning to. But also, it is their first album, I believe, and that always comes with its own engineering issues because you don't always have, you know, $1 million engineers, top of the line engineers to work on your stuff. For all I know, this could have been recorded in their attic. And they didn't have a record label or something at this time. I don't know. If you have any information about that, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. You can check out the description if you're interested in joining the Discord or the Patreon. Links are there. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, with the next two special selections for this week. And then, of course, I'll be back the next day at the same time, 5 o'clock every day. All right, and we're looking at 2 videos for a while. Until next time, remember to be critical and not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.